Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
Go back and look at it, each game has had one big play as far as their offense, stretching our field vertically and making a play. And that's one of the things that we have to guard against as a defense, is allowing that one play to be the difference maker.
When I think back and I think about the incredible ride, if it was in today's era, I don't know that I would have played as long or as much for a variety of reasons. And having gone through that time frame of baseball, perseverance is the biggest word that I could think of.
Well, congratulations, Smoltzy, Hall of Famer. No surprise there. I think everyone thought he would get in on the first ballot, and he certainly did. Another bravo headed to the Hall. The Hall of Fame class announced today with 4 going in. A lot of things to talk about today. Update you on recruiting. Add another name to USC's commitment list for 2015 in Devontae Covington, defensive end at Georgia Military Junior College. We'll talk about that in a moment. Talk about what it all means from a South Carolina recruiting standpoint. Basketball, of course, SEC games tipping off tonight. South Carolina getting ready for Florida tomorrow. Clemson heading up to Louisville. We heard Frank Martin last night. Tonight, Brad Brownell. Also, Wofford coach Mike Young. The Terriers off to a 2-0 start. Great win for them on the road last night at Chattanooga. We'll chat with him a little bit later on. And tonight, we say goodbye to one of the great coaches in our state, Chuck Reedy, officially retiring as a football coach at Goose Creek High School and officially retiring from football coaching altogether. And he has been in our state for a long, long time. He was at Clemson. He was at South Carolina. He was the head coach at Baylor. Then he went to Goose Creek, which was one of the worst programs in the state, and turned them into one of the best in the state. And we salute him. He's a good friend of ours, known him for decades. And I always say, guys, I'm happy for them when they reach this point, but I'm sad for me because I hate to lose a good coach in our state.
He's not going to end up taking a job in North Carolina.
No double
This is it for him.
No double. He's a businessman now. He's got a lot of businesses on the side and restaurateur, that sort of thing. And
he was also the former co-host of
Sports Talk
the very early pregame show that we used to do back over at now known as Liberty.
I was sitting across from him.
Yes.
It's interesting. I always remember the story he tells about being at Baylor and the one that got away when he talks about and he talks about the shoulder injury back in high school. He had Drew Brees because his parents both graduated from Baylor.
Really?
And then Drew Brees developed the shoulder problem and sat out a year. And then he looks up and he ends up at Purdue, I believe it was. He said,
"Well, I'm sure Drew Brees got to look at Chuck Reedy's offense in college. He might not have been too excited about.
He might have really been air Chuck with Drew Brees.
Changed off.
I don't Reedy would ever thrown the ball a great deal, but we wish him all the best in the world as he moves forward into the retirement stage of his football life. But he'll be very active in the business life as well. We wish him and his wife Debbie all the best moving forward. Hope to get him on the show here before too long. We'll be back in just a moment. Good to be with you here on this Tuesday edition of Sports Talk. 800-956-7266 is the phone number. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com. Twitter address at sportstalksc. On Facebook, Sports Talk Radio Network. And, of course, the website is sportstalksc.com. Check it all out. Be a part of the ever-growing Sports Talk family as we come to you once again from Main Street, downtown Columbia. Sports Talk, your Sports Talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. Take plenty of your phone calls tonight. 800-956-7266. Lines are open right now. Recruiting questions, observations, they are certainly welcomed tonight. Basketball comments, too. And also, of course, the ongoing, never-ending conversation about football. Make sure you get to the website to vote on the State Player of the Year. The nominees are Pharaoh Cooper, Dylan Thompson from USC, Vic Beasley, Deshaun Watson of Clemson, Alex Ross, and Quinn Backus from Coastal. They were nominated by me. And so, more than 1,100 votes in. Pharaoh Cooper with 43%, Vic Beasley at 39%, Deshaun Watson at just under 16%. Get in there and vote. 800-956-7266, the number. Now, Gamecock Central reported this afternoon, and his coach confirmed it for us later this afternoon, that Devontae Covington is indeed still part of USC's commitment class. He really, according to his coach, should never have been considered not part of the class. He said to me that South Carolina has been in regular contact with them, monitoring his progress. They've always wanted him back. Remember, they signed him out of high school, out of Richmond County. He was a Shrine Bowler in North Carolina, in Rockingham. And they always wanted him back if he showed the proper academic progress. He was never going to be a mid-year guy. And he's going to come out in May, and his coach said that he is on track to graduate in May. He's now about 6'3", 230. And very, very good defensive end, had 5 sacks, 14 tackles for loss this season. That gives the Gamecocks 5 listed defensive ends in their commitment class, which now stands at 28 if you include those that were carried over from the previous recruiting campaign. And so since they always wanted him to be part of the class, my first thought was, well, maybe they're going back to him because they're losing Arden Key or they're losing Quandeski Whitlow, 2 defensive ends that I think are far from locks now for South Carolina. Whitlow got an offer from Florida, and you have to be concerned there if you're South Carolina. And now Key has set up an official with Auburn and has been tweeting wildly about the Tigers. He is by no means a lock at this particular point, though he might just be playing everybody. He does enjoy the attention that all the recruiting has brought him. But apparently, according to the coach at Georgia Military, Burt Williams, again, Covington was in South Carolina's plans all along, as long as he made the academic progress, which he is making. So that's one of the big stories in recruiting today. We'll pass along other recruiting notes to you as we go along through the program. I mentioned that Maltz was elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame today in his first year of eligibility. What a class he'll be a part of. Randy Johnson going in first year of eligibility. Pedro Martinez as well. And then Craig Biggio, who just missed getting in last year, he gets in this year. It's only the 4th time in history at least 4 players were elected into the Hall by the Baseball Writers of Association vote. Johnson, he got 97.3%. That's about as close as you can come to being unanimous.
Yeah.
Martinez at 91.1. The record high percentage, 98.84 by, who knows?
I don't know.
Who knows? Steakman?
Tom Seaver.
Very good. I knew pro would know. Tom Seaver got 98.84% in 1992.
Because he pitched for the Mets.
And the odd man out
he was pretty damn good, too.
He was, too.
Mike Piazza. He was
who just came up short. Smoltz got 82.9, Biggio 82.7. You got to get 75%.
Smoltz only got one more vote than Craig Biggio. I mean, Biggio's the one that, again, great player. Now, I know that some guys like Barry Bonds isn't in right now because his head turned into a watermelon when he was playing, and everybody
got 36.8%.
assumes he was on steroids. But there's also a little. There were rumblings that Biggio was a juicer too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know who juiced and who didn't, but Craig Biggio getting in. Maybe that's why Mike Piazza.
69.9%.
Yeah, I probably would have given Piazza the edge.
If Piazza gets into the Hall of Fame, he might arguably be the lowest draft choice in the modern era to make it into the Hall.
Yeah. Drafted as a favor. Tommy Lasorda did it because that's his godson.
Turned out pretty well.
Yeah, and of course, Smoltz came because Atlanta was in the doldrums, and they had an ace pitcher, I think Doyle Alexander, back in the day, and the Detroit Tigers wanted an old pitcher to get over the hump to win a pennant, and the Braves sent them Doyle Alexander. They said, "Who you give us back?" We got a young pitching prospect named John Smoltz, and they've been thanking the Tigers ever since.
Don Mattingly got 9% of the vote. He drops off the ballot now. That was his 15th and final chance to get in through the regular writers voting. Sammy Sosa got 6.6%. Nomar Garciaparra. At one point in his career, I would have thought he'd be a lock for the Hall of Fame, the way things are going.
Especially the way he used to take his gloves on and off, unsnap them.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, it used to drive me nuts watching him bat.
Yeah.
And Roger Clemens, 37.5%.
Another one. Yeah. I mean, the steroid era. And those guys, I still think those guys should go in. You could call it the steroid era. I mean, those guys to me are Hall of Famers. Roger Clemens is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, how can you
Barry Bonds is a Hall of Famer.
Well, then if you do that, you got to let Pete Rose in.
Well, Pete Rose is a Hall of Famer. And when you put him in there, have the whole story there. So when people go to Canton, they can read all about what Pete Rose did, his fall from grace, the speculation about Barry Bonds, the asterisks, whatever. But those guys,
well, the problem with the steroid guys, I understand what you're saying. The problem with the steroid guys is that those who did not use steroids will feel like their records are tainted because they had the juice in them. They had the additional.
It's kind of we don't know who was doing the greenies, the upper. I mean, all these guys, we don't know who did what. And I mean, and everybody's kind of painted with this brush. Even now, guys test positive, they're suspended, they can come back, they're going to get into the Hall of Fame. The writers have just cherry picked some guys, the most front and center guys like Barry Bonds,
the ones who would
Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. Yeah, like we're going to make these two guys.
I mean,
the poster and Sammy Sosa. And Mark McGwire.
I think Bonds would have had a hard time getting in because the writers he hated the writers and the writers hated him.
Barry Bonds is a great baseball player, one of the all-time great baseball players, an all-time jerk, maybe. So was Ty Cobb. He's in. I mean, I don't know.
And if it's a true Hall of Fame, it tells the story of baseball.
Put him in warts and all.
If you tell the story about, well, these guys could have had high figures, but it was the dead ball era. Then
because they're not throwing out these guys' records. I mean, Barry Bonds still has the single season home run record. Baseball has not said nope, that doesn't count. They didn't say Hank Aaron is now your home run leader again. No. So if the records are going to stand in the books, then these guys should be in the Hall of Fame. And I know this comes up every year, and you could make cases for other guys. Tim Raines didn't do steroids. I think he should be in before Craig Biggio. That's just an opinion. But Barry Bonds. I get it. You guys made your point. Put these guys in the Hall of Fame already.
All right, a couple of other notes. Florida State quarterback Jameis Winston is seriously considering, it says here, staying in school for another year. This is a Yahoo Sports report. His father told ESPN earlier Tuesday that the redshirt freshman will wait until next week to announce whether he will declare for the draft. He has until January 15th. He made a comment after losing in the playoff that he looks forward to being back next year at Florida State. Of course, he's also a baseball player for the Seminoles.
At an alumni gathering, I guess.
That's not, he didn't say that, but maybe that's what his intent was. Ray Lewis III, who was a reserve defensive back at Miami, did not play in the bowl game against USC. The son of the former Hurricane and NFL great Ray Lewis is transferring to Coastal Carolina. He announced this on his Instagram account today. All right, so he's going to be a Chanticleer. Back in a moment. Lines are open, 800-956-7266. If you want to join us tonight, email talkback@sportstalksc.com. And on Twitter, our Twitter timeline, @SportsTalkSC. Feel free to join us on Twitter. Sign up and follow us on Twitter if you haven't done so yet. I mentioned Ray Lewis III headed to Coastal Carolina as a transfer. Also, the Chanticleers recently announced these additions. Offensive lineman Daniel Anusha, he's from University of Alabama, Birmingham. Also played at Antelope Valley Junior College. Offensive lineman 6'4", 290. So with UAB shutting down its program, he's transferring to Coastal. Defensive back Eric Church, who's transferring from Kent State. Defensive back Austin Murillo, who is a defensive back. I think I said that. He's transferring from the College of the Canyons. All of those are headed to Coastal Carolina to help out that program. And let's see. We got basketball, of course, tonight. How about Notre Dame taking down North Carolina last night? We were watching that game here.
Yeah.
And they held on to pull that game out.
Just incredible how they were able to rebound with the Tar Heels. And they played a smart game. They just absolutely beat them on the defensive and offensive boards, and that's what won that game, because North Carolina was making a run, looked like they were going to take the lead, and they turned it over, and Roy Williams smelled something because it was still 3 minutes to go. He said, there was our chance, and we blew it.
Ole Miss plays at Kentucky tonight at 7 o'clock on the SEC network, so we'll see what Ole Miss can do with the nation's #1 team. Probably not a whole heck of a lot. I mean, I think the only team that can run with Kentucky is Kentucky's second team. Virginia at Florida State tonight. That's 7 o'clock as well in ACC play. The other half of the SEC doubleheader tonight on the network is Texas A&M at Alabama. You also have Auburn at Vanderbilt tonight in SEC play. In the Big Ten, number 22 Ohio State will play at Minnesota. Also in the ACC, Pittsburgh plays at Boston College. That's a 9 o'clock tip. And, of course, around here, getting ready for South Carolina and Florida. Florida kind of reeling right now, got a lot of injuries, a lot of players not playing up to their capabilities. That's why they're 7-6. South Carolina has got to be on guard. Everybody's saying all these great things about them now. The men and the women are on these winning streaks and getting a lot of attention. K-Mac, they can't allow themselves to be lulled into a sense of security here.
Yeah, well, I don't think Frank Martin's ever been lulled into much of anything, and teams take on the persona of their coach. But Florida's dangerous. They have a lot of good players that haven't played up to their capability, and I'm sure they're looking at the conference slate as kind of a clean slate for them. Flush everything that happened in the non-conference slate, and they played some good teams. Now they lost 6 games, but they had Kansas on the ropes in Kansas at Paul Allen Fieldhouse, and they blew a big lead there. So they got the talent to beat anybody.
And, of course, they tipped the ball into their own basket against Florida State right at the end. The key point of this is you got to look at the timeline from the Kentucky game. South Carolina is 13-5 since that upset of Kentucky last year. And this team has been in the pits. I don't think they'll take anything for granted.
More sports talk coming up. Tuesday edition Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, 800-956-7266 is the phone number. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com and on Twitter at sportstalksc. Lines are open if you want to join us tonight. Got time to take your phone calls, pick up on conversation from last night or anything new you want to talk about tonight. John Smoltz going into the Baseball Hall of Fame for you Braves fans, something else to be proud of. I remember when the Braves acquired him from Detroit, it was sort of like, who is this guy? What will he ever become? You know, what can he do for the Braves? And, man, what a career he had, both as a starter, then as a closer. I mean, that's pretty remarkable, guys, when you
and didn't he go back to a starter again? Didn't he go starter, closer, starter again?
I think he did. I think he did.
As a starter.
I mean, that's pretty incredible when you think about how hard it is to do each one individually and to change your mindset from starting to closing, then back to starting again. And he was able to accomplish that.
Well, the only thing he did when he came out of that bullpen is bring a fire gun with him. That's what say, just fire that fastball. He was an interesting contrast to the other two that's already in the Hall of Fame because, Glavine and Maddox, they were the easygoing, nibble the corners, and then pop an 85-mile-an-hour fastball across the plate, but it looked 95 because of the junk they were throwing. Whereas Smoltz was the antithesis of that, and he throws flames at you, and it really helped in their rotation because you get the junk one night, and then suddenly here's the flame coming the next night, and that really kept teams off balance.
Yeah, he's also an outstanding golfer, and I tell you, the Braves, that heyday that they had with that group, that pitching staff, that coaching staff, their everyday lineup came back. I don't know that they'll ever accomplish that again. They had such a personality, those guys. It's really a shame they only won one World Series.
Well, that's what some people will remember. But I think that's more of a testament on just how difficult it is to go to and win a World Series, but to win 14 straight divisions and put together that kind of team, the organization, to do that year in and year out. It's easy to forget how great they were. And I think we're reminded when we see these guys going into the Hall of Fame. Chipper Jones is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer too. They had so many great pieces out there, and that will never be duplicated again. I don't think there will ever be an organization to get on that kind of run the way the Braves did for that extended of a period.
One of the reasons is because you don't have Ted Turner's checkbook.
Yeah.
Because the day they were struggling on offense, they said, "Wait a minute, McGriff is available. What? How much does he want?" And they brought him in. But they
brought in the right guy because the Yankees and Dodgers will throw. They're not afraid to open up the checkbook. But if you bring in the wrong guy or he gets hurt or he's a bum. So it's not just as simple as opening up the checkbook. They made good moves. They had great scouting.
Yeah,
they did everything right.
And as they said, they do it the Braves way. And if you notice in their clubhouse, if they made a trade and the guy was not one of them, they were out the next year. What was the guy? Lofton, the center fielder? Oh, no. He's a great speedster and all, but he's not a Brave. So they let him go that next year. So they would they'd ease you out as soon as if you came in and you didn't play it the Braves way, you were gone.
800-956-7266. The number coming up, we'll hear from Clemson basketball coach Brad Brownell, as well as Mike Young. Wofford basketball coach will join us in the next hour. Clemson heading up to Louisville tomorrow night, 9 o'clock on the ACC network, guys. And I got to believe that they'll play better than what they did against North Carolina. And, in basketball, playing better means making some shots. You make shots, everything looks better. You just seem to play better. You play better defense. You thrive
sounds better.
Off of that.
Cheerleaders are prettier.
Yeah, the whole deal. You're making some shots.
Better.
You look better. But, Louisville is Louisville, and it's up there. And not at all expecting Clemson to win the game, but perhaps play a better game and maybe be a little more competitive. I mean, they only made 5 shots in the first half against North Carolina, only 10 in the second half, and they were well out of it for most of the second half. Then again, Louisville is so talented in playing at home. They won their ACC opener on the road. This will be their ACC opener at home, first one in their history. You know that Rick Pitino is going to want to come out and put on a good show and take care of business.
Yeah, the key point is some of these guys are Jukwa, Roper seemed to have plateaued. They need to knock down some shots. If they can knock down some shots, they can stay in the game, because Clemson's going to have a tough time with Harold in there. That's a beast inside the rebounds. If anything, you throw it into Noko and see if you can get him into foul trouble. That's the only way you can get him out of the game. And the other night when I saw him hit a couple of threes, I said, hold it, wait a minute. Because he couldn't breathe out that far a couple of years ago. So you can tell he's got a well-rounded game, and they have to be ready for that vaunted Louisville press.
Yeah.
They got to be ready for it, because they'll make you look bad if you turn it over about 5 or 6 straight times, and they can do that to you.
Well, I'm sure the Tigers are reeling a little bit after that performance the other night against North Carolina, where they just couldn't get anything going offensively. And Brownell said after the game, he pointed out guys individually and said, this guy's not playing that well. That guy's not playing that well. He's got to pick it up, got to get more out of this position. And I don't know what he can do right now to fix it. He keeps bringing up the fact that he lost his best player from last year, who's now in the NBA, of course, and he's not coming back. Obviously, they're going to have to try and move on without him, and they apparently miss him more than anybody would have thought, both in terms of offensive contribution as well as defense and blocking shots. What they don't have, as he pointed out the other day, they don't have that guy around the rim right now to intimidate and block shots like they had last year.
Because that makes your press less effective, because guys are worried that once they get beaten, there's nobody there to reject the shot. So that's the key also. But Noko is a guy that has to learn to use his body. I think he can be intimidating for us, but it seems that he hadn't grown. He seems to be a guy that when you look at him 3 years from now, I don't care if you're overseas or something, you're going to say, where was that at Clemson? And some guys just develop slower, and he seems to be a big guy that's developing very slowly right now.
Well, hopes were high for Clemson after last season, the way they won 10 league games and made it to the Final Four of the NIT, even though they were losing some good players off of last year's team. Still, hopes were pretty high going into this season, but always looking ahead, you knew they had this 5-game stretch of North Carolina, Louisville, Pittsburgh, Virginia, and Syracuse. There was no escaping it. That's what was laid out for them, and now they're right in the middle of it, K-Mac, and it's off to a bad start. They lose by 24 at home to North Carolina. And what Brad Brownell has to do as a head coach is kind of hold it together, not let this thing snowball out of control and just have a disastrous season.
Yeah, and that's a tough thing to do sometimes. But I will say this about Brownell. His teams, since he's arrived, have played better as the season progresses. That seems to be his trend, and I think that's usually a testament of a good program, good coach. The players catch on a little bit. They're going through the lumps. They're going to take some lumps this year, and they are kind of retooling things. They did lose some pretty good players, KJ McDaniels being the key guy. So, and now they're playing teams that could go to the Final Four, all of them. I mean, they're playing a group of teams that if any one of them made the Final Four, nobody would be shocked.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, even Pittsburgh's 10-4, lost their ACC opener, but still in Pittsburgh, big physical team as always. They'll be a handful. And then once they get through this 5-game stretch, you kind of hope that things lighten up a little bit. You do play Florida State and maybe at home. That could be a win. Wake Forest at home certainly is a winnable game. Then you go to NC State, probably not a winnable. Well, it's winnable, but probably won't be a win. Boston College at home could be a win. Then they go to Florida State. They go to Miami, which has been very good all year. Then they get Notre Dame at home. There's Virginia Tech. There's maybe 5 or 6 possible wins there, but then there's going to be some games you're just going to have to go out and just take if they're going to add to their win column.
You're going to have to really grow, as K-Mac said. And I think the key point is you got to look at the future as well, and that is you're getting a new arena in a year or two, and then Brunell has to strategically use, and I guess he has in the past, but do it again, have that football program work for you when you bring recruits in. The new arena, the football program, build that way.
Yeah, coming off a tough loss against North Carolina.
It's going to be a hostile environment. You're going to play a team that's playing their first.
Well, talking about Clemson and Louisville coming up tomorrow night at Louisville, Coach Brad Brownell from Clemson meeting with the media today to talk about that game and his team, and knows that he's got a tough task ahead tomorrow night.
It's going to be a hostile environment. You're going to play a team that's playing their first ACC game, and so there's going to be a lot of hype about it. There'll be a lot of energy in the building, and we just need to get off to a good start again. It's those are critical in games against these kinds of teams that are, top programs. If you don't get off to a good start and set the tone a little bit, it just puts you in a heck of a hole. And so really we just need to take care of the ball early, got to try to rebound physically, and then we're going to have to make a couple shots. And unfortunately, I thought we guarded reasonably well the first, 10 minutes of the game, but we just didn't make enough shots and put us in a huge hole against North Carolina, and we can't have that happen again against a team like Louisville. The good start is really important for us to hang around and build confidence in the game. But they're very talented. I mean, Rozier is one of the more underrated guys in the country right now who's, outstanding guard. Obviously, everybody knows about Montrezl Harrell and Chris Jones, outstanding guard as well. So they have really good pieces, play very hard, unique style that's hard to deal with, because it forces steals and turnovers. And I think they're top 5 in the country maybe in steals right now. So it has you kind of on guard, on edge all the time. And, we're really going to have to be strong with the ball, be physical in our cuts to get open against the pressure, and then try to make some good decisions. Yeah, there's no question Landry Noko, has to play well in this game. He has to become a factor for us offensively. We got to do a better job of getting him the ball, and he's got to finish better. And he's got to take on a bigger role with the want to, really. I mean, he wants to, but he lost a little bit of confidence. He got to bounce back, and we had a hard time getting to him earlier in the North Carolina game. He was open, and we probably had 3 passes deflected that we were trying to throw into him, and we couldn't get him in because of their pressure and length. And we got to do a better job of that. But he's got to find some other ways in offensive rebounding and running the floor and doing other things to go earn a basket or two on his own. And then we got to do a better job of getting him some. And that will be a point of emphasis in this game.
Louisville's going to want to press you. You had success earlier against Arkansas. It's a different kind of press. Is that?
Yeah, Arkansas pressed us and Auburn did, and we've done well against both. I hope that'll continue. It's a little bit this is a little bit unique in that it's not as much risk reward. It's more safety pressing, but it's not really safety pressing because of the way their guards can really bother you. But they don't take a lot of chances. Like they're not trapping you unless it's out of a run and jump situation. They're just putting extreme pressure on you to get the ball in bounds, extreme pressure to bring it up versus, some of the ball hawks you'll go against. And then they'll mix in some running and jumping and things. It's very good. I mean, it is really good. It may be harder to deal with than the others, but it'll be a big factor in the game in terms of how our guards handle that.
When you have it kind of going through a bit of a confidence issue, do you change the way you coach a little bit? Do you
yeah, I mean, you're constantly changing the way you coach. You're demanding sometimes and you're patient sometimes. I said that before. Really good coaches are both patient and demanding. You have to be both. And, it's a very fine line when guys are a little bit fragile at times. And, I'm usually just very honest with our team and how I feel they're playing and what I see. And, sometimes that has me irritated and I'm more demanding. And sometimes I have to realize I need to be patient and back off. I've been both here in the last couple of days. And, at the end of the day, our players just have to go make plays, especially in a game like Louisville where the way they play stylistically takes some things out of your hands as a coach.
Tough assignment. Montrezl Harrell, who we were talking about earlier, one of the leading scorers in the ACC. He's also one of the leading rebounders in the ACC. He's among the best offensive rebounders in the ACC, so you got to keep him off the offensive glass. Clemson struggling offensively, last in the league in scoring, last in the league in field goal percentage. But the Tigers can play defense. I mean, they still bring their defense with them, and they can clamp down on you. But this is still a high-scoring Louisville team that averages in the mid-70s, and at their place, it's going to be awfully tough. Back in a moment with recruiting. All right, to the recruiting report tonight, as we mentioned at the outset of the program, defensive end Devontae Covington from Georgia Military Junior College out of Rockingham, North Carolina, who signed with USC after the 2013 season, played in the Shrine Bowl as a defensive end, is going to be a part of the Gamecocks 2015 class as long as he finishes up his academics and graduates here in the summer. This, according to the coach at Georgia Military, Burt Williams. He has said that South Carolina has remained in touch and on top of Covington throughout his 2 seasons at Georgia Military after placing him there when he did not qualify. He said, the coach did, that they were always engaged with him. There wasn't any question they were interested in bringing him back in. He did require a little more work than some. He talked to Joe Robinson in December, who wanted to make sure that the grades were on track and all that. And he is on track to graduate in May. This season, Covington had 39 tackles, 14 tackles for loss, and 5 sacks. His coach said he's an impact guy, a big play guy coming off the edge, very quick and get off, deceptive power because he looks like a long, lean guy, he said, but has an explosive punch when he engages and catches a lot of guys off guard. So this puts the Gamecocks at 28 commitments for the class, including 5 defensive ends. USC commitment defensive back Damon Arnett of Fort Lauderdale was offered by Michigan today. He set an official visit with the Wolverines for January 16th. He will visit USC January 23rd, and he will visit Ohio State on January 30th. Louisville has come off his visits list. USC commitment defensive end Arden Key has scheduled an official visit to Auburn for January 30th. This, according to Auburn Undercover. Key talked with new Auburn defensive coordinator Will Muschamp on Monday, and he set the visit. He had Georgia set for that date. Now we'll have to find another time to visit the Bulldogs. He has visits set LSU January 16th, USC January 23rd, and he also wants to visit Miami. Athlete Denzel Johnson of AC Flora now drawing the interest of NC State. They've not offered, but he set a visit for January 30th. He talked with Clemson coach Dabo Swinney on New Year's Day. Tigers are still interested in him, not sure if they like him as a receiver or as a defensive back. He says he's not heard anything new from USC. He's taken an official visit to Towson and is scheduled to visit Clemson January 16th and Georgia Southern on the 23rd. Receiver Tavin Richardson of Burns is down to Central Florida, Louisville, and Kentucky. He's been to Central Florida. He'll visit Louisville on the 16th, Kentucky on the 23rd. Shrine Bowl defensive lineman Yurdreus Bryant of Fort Dorchester plans to take an official visit to Georgia. Blythewood linebacker Hassan Belton will visit Missouri January 23rd. And Chapin offensive lineman Stephen Haralambous has committed to Charleston Southern. Air Force and Army are also recruiting him and pushing for visits. That's recruiting. Top of the hour break.
Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
All right, Georgia, Arkansas underway in Athens. Georgia's up 5-4 in that one, and Virginia Tech, Florida State just underway in Tallahassee. Let's go to Mike in Aiken, get to our phone calls here on Sports Talk. Later on, Mike Young from Wofford will join us. Mike, good evening, and welcome in. Mike in Columbia, Mike in Columbia, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Phil. Hey, I want to say Happy New Year to you guys. I love you guys' show. I don't know if you touched on this. I hadn't listened until Monday. But, guys, I'm just calling in, anybody calling in. But I had a real good source. I got some people that go to Florida State. I don't know if you guys have talked about this, but it's a strong possibility that Jameis Winston is going to come back for ball next year, football. Mm-hmm. And I just want to get you guys' opinion on that because and the reason I think it makes sense is, one, he said over and over he's trying to get his degree. And he's also said anybody can be a first-round pick, but he wants to be a Hall of Famer in the NFL. And if you think about it, Phil, Brady, Breeze, Aaron Rodgers, Roethlisberger, those guys right now, they're the golden standard of NFL. And guess what? All of them, I could be wrong, all of them have had 4 years of college ball. And Winston said he wants to be like Brady and Manning. And so he feels like they say that he can come back and mature. Now, and also, too, Jameis Winston is not stupid. The young lady in the center of this whole thing about the sexual assault allegations, if he goes now, lawsuit's going to probably come down on the road, a pending lawsuit. But if he waits a year, that whole case is going to probably go away. I just want to get you guys' opinion on that.
No, thanks very much. There was a story we mentioned earlier in the show that he was possibly strongly considering returning for next year. He has until January 15th to make the final decision about the NFL. And, with Winston, the only thing I would say is I've seen some NFL people evaluating for the draft saying that he right now and Mariota are 1 and 2, depending on where you want to place them, draft picks, number 1, number 2, number 2, number 1. And so when that's presented to you by whoever you happen to listen to, knowing the risk of injury could cost millions of dollars next year. And now your college season is over. So you're not going to risk yourself anymore this year. You're set to go to the draft. If that's what the feedback you're getting from the NFL, that'd be hard to say no to.
Unless he just wants to play baseball and come back and finish strong. Everybody's wired a little bit different. Absolutely. He doesn't have anything left to prove in college. He had a down year. Maybe he wants to come back and try to put together another Heisman campaign and be the number 1 overall pick. There's no telling. He has some growing up to do. I mean, all the stuff that's happening legally, forget that. I mean, he just is making some really foolish, childish decisions in the way he's acting and walking into that semifinal game, pretending he was smoking. It was just sophomoric, and he needs to grow up.
Yeah, that would really shake things up in the ACC next year if Jameis Winston comes back. Because right now, you think about the ACC Atlantic Division and you think Clemson, and justifiably so with all the offensive talent the Tigers will put on the field next year. Then all of a sudden, if he decides to come back for another year at Florida State, that really changes the entire dynamics of that division. And now they do have to come to Clemson next year, which, Clemson is very capable of beating Florida State at home, nearly beat them at their place this year. But, I mean, that really kind of throws the Atlantic back into a tizzy.
I just think that, okay, I'm not going to get convoluted with this, but I'll mention in this era where it seems that the college education is being devalued because it's outpricing everybody, and the idea of college is to go and get a degree or get some skills in which you can make a living. If you're in the NFL, you can go back and get your degree. I mean, a lot of players do that anyway. Mm-hmm. And of course, in the NCAA, they have scholarships for guys who return after they've used up their eligibility or decide to turn pro. So bottom line, Corn, is if he keeps his nose clean and the officials, if he can assure them that, okay, I'm not this bad guy that everybody says I am, but, well, I'm maybe a little bit immature. Mm-hmm. If I'm just the best case scenario for me is to go into the draft and get drafted by Tampa. I don't have to go anywhere. And I got a big fan base sitting right there. And from a business standpoint, if he turns it on, I mean, Tampa has a renaissance. If that's the case, it depends on what Lovie Smith decides to do, because being a defensive coach, he may go defense. But I think I'm not so certain they need a quarterback, but maybe they do. And if I'm Jameis Winston, I'm coming out with assurances that, hey, Tampa is the place I want to go.
I was just looking at one mock draft during the break, and of course they're all about the same at the very top end of the draft. And this particular mock draft had Mariota going 1 to Tampa Bay and had Winston going 2 to the Titans. And so that's what we're talking about here. If you're Jameis Winston and you're sitting there and they're telling you, hey, man, you're going to be the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick in the draft, and you're as a quarterback, especially in a year when there's so many NFL teams came back that need to upgrade at quarterback. This isn't one of those years where quarterback is, maybe, maybe not. There are teams in the league that have to improve at quarterback. They say maybe 9 or more teams will draft quarterbacks in the first round.
And it's always a crapshoot.
Not in the first round, but we'll draft.
You don't know how they're going to pan out, and teams are scared of certain guys too. I mean, Johnny Manziel, that didn't look so good for Cleveland in year 1, and maybe he'll get it together, but that guy's got a lot of baggage, and that's kind of what Jameis Winston has too when we were talking about him. Quarterback in the NFL is the toughest position in all of sports. I mean, you have a certain number of guys that can play on the PGA Tour and play at a high level and win a PGA Tour event. There aren't 32 people on this planet that can start and be successful in the NFL at quarterback. There's not. There's about 16 that are reliable, another 10 that are hit or miss.
And you got to remember, a guy like Tom Brady was drafted on the 6th round.
Bums. I mean, there are 5 teams every year in the NFL that just have an absolute turd at quarterback.
I think what happens is, especially when they're young, if you draft a player early and you expect too much from him early on, they lose confidence. And some of them get puncher's drunk and they never recover. That's what happens to a lot of young quarterbacks. Now, the key point is the NFL has to do their due diligence in how a guy can accept pro coaching and deal with a pro offense. Every team can't draft an Andrew Luck or Matt Ryan who played in a pro offense all in college, because everybody else used the spread. So they got to learn to play in a pro style offense, and that's where the learning curve comes in. And it's always a gamble when you use the number 1 pick on a QB.
Well, you look at Florida State for next year, and they do get wiped out across the front. They lose their tight end O'Leary and his backup Haplia, and O'Leary special. They lose their left guard, their center, their right guard, and their right tackle.
And the kicker.
Their left tackle does return. They lose Rashad Green, the best wide receiver.
He's gone.
He departs, yeah.
You can stop now. He's gone.
Arguello's just a sophomore.
Oh, okay.
He's not going anywhere unless he's a redshirt sophomore. He could declare for the draft. But by the way, Clemson made it official today too that Bradley Pinion is leaving for the draft.
Okay. Can we get to the tweet of the day, though? Can we do the tweet of the day? Let's tweet the day. And it kind of has a Clemson connection. Casanova McKenzie, who at one time was going to go to Clemson, but he wanted Chick-fil-A, an easily accessible Chick-fil-A, which apparently Auburn offered. So Chick-fil-A brought Casanova McKenzie to Auburn, and apparently God Almighty is going to keep him there. Here's the tweet from McKenzie 30. I had a talk with God, and God says, no, Cass, don't go. Everything is possible through him. He has the last say-so. So Casanova McKenzie will be returning to Auburn for another season and will not be entering the NFL draft by the decree of God.
Okay.
God kept him at Auburn.
Now,
so they brought him there.
Are you questioning that he actually heard the voice?
I thought maybe it was Gus instead of God. But no, I think this is. I don't know what kind of voice. Yeah.
We want to get back to breaking down Florida State here, though. Their offense takes a heavy hit.
Yes.
Defensively, they lose two of their starting front three. They're a 3-4. So they lose Eddie Goldman, who declared, and they lose Desmond Holland, the other defensive end. I think Derek Mitchell's still coming back, isn't he?
I think so.
The nose guard, haven't heard anything otherwise. Linebackers are back. I think Reggie Northrup is back, is he not? Terrence Smith is back. Ronald Darby's back, unless these guys decide to declare, which I haven't heard that they have. And both of their safeties are back. So, they're going to be kind of opposite of Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
They're losing a bunch on offense in terms of starters. They may or may not have their quarterback back. If they don't have Winston back, then it's really start over time offensively for them. But they do have the bulk of their defense returning and the kicker who can win a lot of games for them. They will be probably a defensive-heavy team next year, I would think, until whoever is the quarterback kind of works his way into it. Now, if Winston comes back, you got Dalvin Cook who'll be back. They do lose Carlos Williams. You got Dalvin Cook will be back. He'll be one of the best running backs in the ACC. And they've always got good young receivers coming up through the program. Christian Green, Travis Rudolph, they'll handle the bulk of the receiving situations for them.
See, I try to anticipate. If I'm Jameis Winston and he'll say something, and I want to anticipate my most negative behavior.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm Jameis Winston, if I'm a quarterback, okay, I'm coming back. We're going to try to win another ACC title or whatever. Now, in the back of my brain, I left millions on the table. And then that first big hit I take, I'm going to think, oh, wait a minute. I may have to start protecting myself. Let me go down for a sec. Let me not go out of the pocket and try to get that extra yard and get my head torn off before I go out of bounds. You have to anticipate your most negative behavior if you turn down something and anticipate, well, wait a minute. This might be the best case scenario for me because I don't know what I'll do if I take that first big hit and start worrying about self-preservation and helping my team win football games.
I think you overthink it. I think it's basically going to come down as
you got to think that way.
I think at the end of the day, despite what we're hearing here today,
he's gone.
He's gone.
Yeah.
I just don't see any way that you walk away from being the first or second pick and maybe the first pick. Some are saying second. Maybe you're going to be the first. Either way, you're cashing in.
Unless he's going to snap into some different personality, he's kind of a loose cannon off the field. So he's one more screw up away. What if Jimbo says, you know what? I've had enough. I mean, he was ready to put him on the bench in that game against Oregon. If you're a good lip reader, you saw exactly what he said. When he's like, if you don't calm the blank down, I'm going to put your blank on the bench.
Winston. I was reading a story about that. He's very protective of Winston. And he's probably more protective of Winston than any other quarterback he's worked with. Maybe Christian Ponder was one he was also very protective of. Xavier Lee talked about how hard Fisher was on him as a quarterback, and that's one of the reasons why he left for the NFL with a year of eligibility. He just couldn't take Fisher anymore as far as how hard he was on him. All right, Georgia with a 23-18 lead on Arkansas over in Athens. Georgia had a pretty decent pre-SEC run and got themselves in good shape heading into the SEC part of the schedule. Georgia going into tonight's game at 9-3, 7-0 at home, and so now another team that has to be dealt with as far as South Carolina is concerned. Couple against Georgia. Georgia, pretty good team this year as they were last year. Mark Fox has done a nice job bringing them along after a kind of an up and down start with the Bulldogs. Florida State leading Virginia Tech 17-13. I wonder if Buzz Williams had wished he'd stayed at Marquette because been a ugly start for him at Virginia Tech. I know he's got some players. He's got some commitments early on. He's got some players coming, but it's going to be kind of slow growth there, especially now that Virginia has established itself. As long as Bennett is at Virginia, looks like they're going to be a power for some time to come.
Yeah, but Buzz Williams is the new guy to watch on the sideline now, because the thing about Buzz Williams, if you ever notice him at Marquette, and I think the ACC people would love it, because he does a slow strip tease during the entire game. He comes in, dapper, suit on, first bag call, the jacket comes off. Then if he's wearing a sweater vest, that comes off next. And then by the middle of the second half, the tie comes off as he's talking to the officials. So he's fun to watch. By the way, early on, it's 12 minutes into the ball game, Kentucky 23, Ole Miss 22.
Ouch.
So Ole Miss in Rupp Arena at least staying close in the first 10 minutes of that ball game.
That's a surprise. But, at some point, Kentucky's going to put their foot on the pedal there and take off. Ole Miss 9-4 going into the game tonight. Of course, Kentucky 13-0 and just been dominating practically everybody. There was one game they had a little bit of a scare from. Do you remember that one? Who was that? It was somebody kind of nondescript.
Was it Cornell or somebody? I can't remember.
Let me look it up here. It was somebody.
But they played very methodical.
Kind of off the charts here. Let's see. It was Providence. They beat by 20. Texas, they beat by 12. Columbia played them to a 10-point game.
I knew it was an Ivy League school,
They beat North Carolina by 14. I think the biggest – well, there's no surprise, but, they beat UCLA by 40, 39 to be accurate. But, UCLA they had their night, too, if I'm not mistaken.
They had the doors blown off again. I forgot who blew them off this time. Maybe it was Arizona State.
I'll tell you who is off to a good start. That's Wofford, 2-0 in the Southern Conference. Got a great win last night in Chattanooga. Mike Young got his team to the NCAA tournament last year, winning the Southern Conference tournament championship. He's got his team well on the move and on track to do the same thing this year. We're going to chat with the Terriers coach coming up after this break on Sports Talk. If you want to join us, 800-956-7266, the number, where we can get back to some phone calls in a little bit as well. Back with Mike Young of Wofford in just a moment. All right, we're in the process of catching up with Wofford basketball coach Mike Young. We'll hopefully have him here with us in just a little bit. Picked up his 200th career win last night as the Terriers had a come-from-behind win at UT Chattanooga, and Carl Cochran was the man, 33 points to rally the Terriers to that win. They're off to a 2-0 start, Southern Conference play, and on their way perhaps to another run to the Southern Conference Championship. But as we know, it's a long season ahead. They've got VMI coming up next on their schedule, and hopefully we'll catch up with Coach Young. He's scheduled to be with us here at this point in time. Hopefully we'll catch up with him in just a couple of moments. Phone number 800-956-7266, and our email talkback at sportstalksc.com. Georgia now has stretched its lead over Arkansas 35-25, and Florida State on top of Virginia Tech 28-23. And what other scores, Pro, do you have that you've been following?
Yeah, well, the last score we had was Kentucky 26 and Ole Miss 22. That's probably changed. I'll check on that for you. But, going back to Wofford, and hope we catch up with the coach. They played they've headed up to Baton Rouge twice and really acquitted themselves very well. I mean, they beat NC State and at least, and they were hanging with Duke for the first 25, 30 minutes until Duke poured it on at the end. But this Wofford team, the thing that gets you about them is their spacing. They never seem to get double teamed. They know how to pass out of the double team if they do, and they've got guys who can knock down shots and get inside and finish over players much taller than they are.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of the College of Charleston search. They could have hired Mike Young. Mike was, I think, interested in that job and perhaps would have made that move. And they, of course, opted for Earl Grant. Earl may turn out to be a heck of a coach for them. They're struggling this year. They lost last night. And it's a slow start for him there. Boy, Mike Young, anybody who knows basketball in these parts will tell you that Mike can draw up the X's and O's and get them executed as well as anybody around. And you kind of scratch your head and wonder what Charleston was thinking if you had a chance to hire a Mike Young simply based on basketball experience and his track record. That's really a no-brainer.
Well, I think the shot for College of Charleston is, and I'm sure they did their due diligence as far as economics are concerned, but I think they probably undervalued how good the CAA actually is until they got into it. And that is a tough conference.
Yeah, they're going to have to up their game. And that was a really bungled process all the way through. But I do think they got a guy that deserves a shot, Earl Grant. And he's early. He's going to have to get established and get some of his players in there. He's going to go out and recruit well, I think, and get Charleston back on the map. That program is just waiting. It's just waiting to get back. They've got a great arena. They've got one of the best cities in the world that they live and play in. They're going to come back at some point, and they've been looking for the right guy. They haven't been able to find the right guy really since John Kress left. I guess Bobby Crimmins will be the closest to that guy that they found. He couldn't quite get them that last step. They would get to the championship game of their conference tournament, but couldn't quite take that last step.
Yeah.
They've got to take that next step. And when they do, I think they'll have a chance to be, back to being one of the top mid-majors in the country.
In Lexington, Ole Miss is leading Kentucky 32-28.
Yes.
440. That's not going to last.
No.
I mean, that's not going to last.
But this is what happens to young players. All of them get to the point where they don't want to relax, but their minds tell them, we're so good, we can roll the balls out. Now, I'm not saying they will openly do that, but it's something in the body language that thinks that we can turn it on anytime we want to. And that's what John Calipari has to deal with almost year in and year out. But see, the shocking thing about this scoreboard, at least in the first half, is he's got the luxury of some upperclassmen this year who ought to know to tell the guys, look, we just can't roll the balls out. Let's play some basketball. But, Andy Kennedy quietly has become the second most tenured coach in the SEC in basketball, I think, to Billy Donovan. And so he's quietly built a team there at Ole Miss, and I think they're starting to build a new arena, if I'm not mistaken. So they're against a seasoned coach there who's not going to back down from anybody.
Cincinnati's on top of East Carolina, 24-16, about 5 minutes to go in the first half. In that one, we'll check some other scores around the SEC, ACC, and other scores of note. Georgetown on top of Marquette, 29-24. And Penn State leads Michigan 21-19. Michigan struggling this year. They've been an early disappointment as they go into Big Ten play. USC Upstate playing Missouri, Kansas City tonight out in the KC. Upstate's 11-4. Great start for them. And let's see what else is underway. I think it's all we got underway so far that I see. I thought there was another. No, I guess there's not another SEC game going on right now, is there?
No.
Besides the two that we have talked about.
Texas A&M and Alabama is later on tonight. By the way, here's a key point. The SEC is now third in RPI in conference.
All right, we've got Coach Mike Young with us now from Wofford. We've been talking about the Terriers and their terrific start. Great win last night at Chattanooga. Coach, how are you? Good to have you with us here on Sports Talk.
Doing well. Hope you're well, buddy.
We are. Thanks for joining us. 68-64 last night at Chattanooga. Had to come from behind to pull it out, and you ride hot shooting of Carl Cochran, 33 points. Tell us about coming from behind and getting that win on the road last night.
Oh, it was a special one. We stole it, Phil. We didn't have a lot going. We been on the road a lot, and not a lot of energy. Chattanooga's very good. Down 14 with 13 in the game, and he's a special player. Kid has over 1,500 points, 500 rebounds, 250 steals in his career. And I've seen him, getting another level, another zone, however you refer to it, on a couple of occasions. But I've never seen Phil. So help me goodness, it was the most impressive offensive display that I've seen in our league, and I've seen a bunch of them. It was an incredible display. 6 threes in the second half, contested. It was a sight to behold, and we picked up another critical road win here in the early going of league play.
Was he scoring within the flow of the offense, or was he going out there and just creating some stuff on his own?
Yeah, Phil, we're going to run him off some screens. But to answer your question, it was within the confines of, what we're trying to do. But, when you have a player of his caliber, of his talents, sometimes he breaks it off and he's going to do what he thinks is best. And he was rolling, and we rolled right along with him. Sometimes you do that with great players.
Well, that's smart coaching. Just kind of stay out of the way and let them do their thing.
Phil, we've known each other a long time, buddy. I'm not going to get in anybody's way.
Well, you made the right call last night. Of course, he had a nice supporting cast around him. Other guys, Lee Skinner had 10 points on the night. So other guys stepped in and did their thing too. I mean, it wasn't just one guy that did it all by himself, though he did in the second half kind of carry the team on his shoulders.
Yeah, and you could go back, and Eric Garcia, there's a kid, Phil, that's playing with his mouth wired shut, broke his jaw December 22nd at West Virginia. He's our point guard. He has played Duke, Sanford, and Chattanooga last night. 3 games. Our point guard averages 30 minutes a game, has his mouth completely wired shut, and has had 1 turnover in those 3 games.
All right, Coach, hang on one second. We got to hit a quick break, and want to come back with you and talk more about that and talk more about your team. VMI coming up. Mike Young's our guest. All right, they're heading to halftime in Athens, Georgia, on top of Arkansas 44-37. SEC play tonight. Back with Coach Mike Young. Sorry to jump in there, Coach. Had to hit a break. But you're telling us about the point guard with the wired mouth and able to kind of hold it together on the court, only one turnover in all these games.
Yeah, he's a great one. And, talk about that game last night. We've got a lot of good players. That's what makes up a good team, and kids screening for Cochran to get free, and good passing. We've got a good team, Phil. I'm excited about them and look forward to what this season holds in store for us.
You like this team compared to last year's team that made the tournament? Do you see comparisons, or is it a totally different kind of team?
It's older, more mature, bigger, stronger. We didn't lose. We lost one young man graduated that played very little because of an injury. We had them all back. And, with Cochran and Skinner and John Swinton, a young man from Charleston, South Carolina, that are returning seniors. So, we brought in a couple of pieces that are in our rotation. Derek Brooks from Bartow, Florida, and Cameron Jackson from Winchester, Virginia, that have added some nice dimensions to our club, and we're appreciably better. And long way to go, but at 11-3, 11-4, whatever we are, times are pretty good up here in Spartanburg right now.
Well, Coach, you've been playing some big teams. I've enjoyed watching your teams on TV, but it's incredible looking at the use of spacing you guys have, and watching some of your players just being able to finish at the rim over players that are much bigger than they are. And of course, really enjoyed the winning play against NC State. That was textbook. I thought that was a tremendous play at the end to get the double team and then break a man wide open for a layup. But talk about the utilization of spacing that your team uses.
Well, it's an interesting thought, and something that we spend a great deal of time on. We want you to guard, as much of that floor as you can. And we have a number of kids that can shoot the ball. If you can't shoot it, they can shrink the floor on you and make it awfully hard. But we have a number of kids that can shoot it. And we're going to spread you out as wide as we can and get you up as high as we can, and try to drive you and make use of every inch of that offensive end of the floor. This team's been an awfully good defensive team as well. We're not clicking on all cylinders yet on the defensive end, but we will. But, the offensive end, we've got some kids can really score it, and they're a lot of fun to watch play.
Talking with Mike Young, coach at Wofford, coming off a big win at Chattanooga. Now you come home on a Thursday night. You take on VMI. And we know what the Keydets love to do. They love to get up and down the floor, tempo, transition, and they're going to try to make you play at their pace.
Yeah, and that's it'll be a test of wills. We don't want to play that way. I'd like to play it in the 60s and take about 50 shots apiece. They want it the other way around, the 90 shots, and in the 80s, 90s, and that's not where we're at our best. And they kind of dictate that tempo a little bit, Phil. So, we've seen quite a bit of film on them last night, today. We've got another day of preparation tomorrow. We'll be ready to go with them when they get up here on Thursday.
Undefeated in the Ben Johnson Arena at this point.
So far, so good. We've been on the road a lot more than we've been in Ben Johnson Arena. I'm sad to say, but we've had some good outings here. Charleston's very good. Barclays got another good outfit. We were fortunate enough to win that one. Iona is terrific, and we won there. But we've got a bunch coming up at home here over the last couple of months. We'll look forward to it.
Listen, we always appreciate the visits and your time, and we'll keep in touch. Talk to you again soon, and good luck to you Thursday night against VMI.
Okay, fellas. Wish you well.
You too, sir. Thank you. All right, Mike Young from Wofford. Wofford 2-0 in the league. Mercer off to a 3-0 start in the SoCon. East Tennessee 3-1. Chattanooga drops to 2-1. Western's 2-1. Citadel got a nice win last night at Greensboro. Much better team for Chuck Grisell this year. They're 6-8, 1-2 overall. That's just a team that needed to get some wins. They had very few wins the last couple of years.
Road games until that win last night.
Yeah, good for them, and they're sort of improving. Furman is 1-2 in the league, 3-10 overall, so a bit of a slow start there. VMI is 1-3 in the league, and then Sanford in the basement at 0-4
at the half. Ole Miss 38, top-ranked Kentucky 36.
I would say, can they hang on? But I think that's kind of a fruitless cause on their part. But who knows? Yeah. I was just watching the new Clemson hype video, as it's been labeled, coming off the Russell Athletic Bowl week and victory. Hype video, work hard, play hard. Nobody does hype better than Clemson. They are number one in the country, as far as I can tell. Maybe there's some other programs out there. The people they have working in their internet department to work on Twitter and Facebook. No, I'm being serious.
No,
work on the internet and putting this stuff out.
I would think Oregon does more than just uniforms.
Well, I don't know. I don't see Oregon stuff. I'm not claiming I see every team. Of course, obviously South Carolina and Clemson, we watch them closely. But gosh, I don't think anybody does a better job of self-promotion and hyping than Clemson does when it comes to the internet. And they get it. They understand where the 15, 16, 17-year-olds are hanging out, the future football players. It's all about recruiting, getting in their minds early, and being cool, and being a cool place to go to school, a cool place to play football. And obviously, it's paying off because their recruiting is outstanding, and they're winning recruiting battles that the analysts who've watched it closely don't feel like they're going to win. They're winning them, and some of this stuff on social media is obviously paying off. Speaking of social media, K-Mac, what is on our Twitter timeline today?
Actually, believe it or not, I never thought this day would come. Donald Trump is on our Twitter timeline. He tweeted earlier this afternoon that he had some big news involving South Carolina.
State of South Carolina.
Well, he just put big news involving South Carolina, and I retweeted
is he buying
that,
the state?
And I said, oh no. And then some people said maybe that he's coming into play as a defensive coach to join Steve Spurrier's staff, or people are wondering if he's going to build a golf course somewhere down or by Kiowa Island, called Trump Island.
Maybe he's going to come down here and play poker with Joe Moglia.
Somebody made the suggestion that he's buying the Panthers, moving them to Bomb Island on Lake Erie, going to have the first NFL stadium on a lake island. And Donald Trump responded that is genius.
He liked that,
thought that was genius. So Donald
Trump
thought that was a genius idea.
One road in and one road out.
So Donald Trump,
the real Donald Trump,
was on our Twitter line. How about that? What else you got?
What else do I?
What are people talking about on Twitter today? On our Twitter line,
they're talking about a lot of things. Somebody wants to know if we have any word on who's taking over at Goose Creek as the new head football coach.
I believe they'll promote from the staff. I think that's. I haven't talked to Chuck today. We'll hope to have him on the show here soon if he hasn't already moved to the Virgin Islands. I think that's his plan, is to move to the Caribbean.
I don't blame him.
I think he was thinking they would promote somebody off his staff. Anything else?
And Darren Horn actually showed up on our Twitter line too. He was talking about how to beat Kentucky, how to pull an upset, and somebody said Devin Downey scoring 30 points and Muldrow blocking a bunch of shots, and he said that's one way someone has to be special, and Devin Downey definitely was that night.
Anybody being
Darren Horn could beat Kentucky now.
Yeah.
He couldn't beat anybody else, but he could beat Kentucky.
Anybody being special for Ole Miss?
Right now, I forgot his first name. It's the guard Moody. He's got 16 points.
Pretty
so
special
far for Ole Miss.
Hey, if you want to get hyped up tonight, you feel like you want to go for a marathon run, watch the Clemson hype video. Work hard, play hard. See you tomorrow night.